Hey, what's happening? My name is D, and welcome back to another episode of Book Reviews with a Regular Dude. Today we're going to be talking about... Today I've stooped pretty low, and we're going to talk about A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Now, before we get into the actual review, I got a couple things I got to say. First and foremost, if you love this series, if Sarah J. Maas is your favorite author of all time, this video ain't for you. Like, I don't think you're going to like it. I didn't like this book. I don't like this author. And I'm a hard person to hate watch because I talk about this slow the entire time. Like, this is about as energetic as I get on here. There are folks who, like, fold laundry and cook and fall asleep to my videos. So, like, I just don't think this is going to be fun. I feel like life is too short to listen to some dude yap if he's just going to say stuff that just pisses you off. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just trying to save you a little bit of time and energy. Secondly, for anyone who's like watched my videos before, I think that I've said that I wasn't going to read or review an SJM book like ever. And up until recently, I had no intention to. But I realized that a bunch of books that I'd reviewed, people would say that the love interests in those books were knockoff characters from this book or this series. And I was like, okay, I kind of want to trace things back to the root of all evil. You know what I'm saying? And also, you know, a couple of my friends, like Expert Book Smuggler and Reads with Rachel, have critiqued or criticized Sarah J. Maas for her political takes or how she used Breonna Taylor's murder to try to market her books one time. And, you know, a lot of fans would come into their comment sections and just defend her with everything they had. It was like the embodiment of that TikTok sound. What is the audacity of this caucasity is reach maximum capacity. You know that sound? Anyways, and so another part of me was also curious, like, what are they even defending? Because I didn't know anything about this book. Like, I knew that it's like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, kind of, and I know the cover. So I was like, yeah, you know, let's see what this is all about. I'm gonna try it. I didn't expect to like it, and spoiler alert, I didn't. I guess I already spoiled that, so whoops. And I'm not out here trying to like endorse SJM, you know. I don't want to support somebody who supports genocide. I want to support and endorse and tell people to read people who support a free Palestine. And also, still pretty pissed about the Breonna Taylor thing. Later in this video, I'm going to bring up another problem that I have with this book that deals with like anti-blackness. So this is going to be fun. Hey, what's happening? It's Editing D. Welcome to a segment that I'm going to call And Another Thing. I guess it's a couple other things, but whatever. So I don't know if it's going to make it into the video, and it probably won't now because I'm saying it again, but in filming, I said I understand that a lot of people identify with their favorite media so strongly that any critique of it feels like a personal attack. But, you know, this is not a personal attack on any fans who've, you know, ignored my warnings and continued to watch the video. And your favorite thing, or the person who made your favorite thing, isn't immune to critique just because it's your favorite. And I think the more you love something, the more you should be willing to critique it. And if you like aren't willing to critique it or acknowledge its flaws, to me that just says that you're afraid of being convinced to not like something, which is not what I'm trying to do. And the thing that I actually came here to talk about was last night I was kind of talking about this with my patrons in the private Discord server, and one of them presented like basically an essay on all the reasons why she thinks that the people who love Sarah J. Maas's books defend them so vehemently. And I really appreciate that patron taking the time to share their thoughts and their findings or whatever. I'm not going to paraphrase it or steal it or whatever, but something that really stuck out to me is like, for a lot of the people who love these books, this kind of literature is a release or an exploration of desires that they're usually like shamed for having or told not to have or something like that. And it's like a safe way of exploring those things without rocking the boat like culturally or whatever. And that's something that I just never like considered, or it didn't occur to me because of my own male privilege. And so I thought I'd just acknowledge that I think that that's like, you know, I still think that this book has a lot of problems, and I think that the love interests are kind of more embodiments of toxic masculinity and misogyny than anything else, wrapped up in sort of semi-charming cloaks. A lot of my critiques of this author or of this book have more to do with those systemic issues than the author herself or anyone who's a big fan of this book. I don't think that Sarah J. Maas has like a white hood in her closet, and I don't think she's like what's her name? Pearl. And I don't think that anybody who's like a huge fan of this series is automatically a racist or automatically a female misogynist or something like that. I don't know if we would like vibe or whatever, but I'm not going to be like, oh, well, you're a shitty person, because I don't automatically think you're a shitty person because of something that you read or watch or whatever. Because, some of the manga that I read or some of the books that I read are probably written by people who are kind of shitty and I don't know that yet, So thank you to that patron for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for watching this. You go back to the original video now. Okay, bye. So yeah, like I said before, A Court of Thorns and Roses is kind of a Beauty and the Beast retelling, apparently. Told that before I read it. Or maybe I wasn't even told that. I'd heard that somewhere before I read it. So I could spot the inspiration, but I would almost say it's like its own thing. And then they just like said that for marketing purposes. You know what I'm saying? Like it clearly draws inspiration from the story, but it is very different. I'm going to do like a rapid fire 4 C's. And this time it will be rapid fire. For those of you who don't know or don't remember, the 4 C's are character, conflict, context, and craft. So I'll do that real quick, and then I'll get into the notes that I took while I was reading this book. All right, so let's start with character. The characterization in this book, as far as like I'm concerned, I'm not like a literary authority or anything, but I found it to be pretty shallow. I don't feel like we really go deep with any particular character. And there's something about these characters that just feels kind of, I don't know, stiff and cold. And they definitely don't feel like fully fleshed out dynamic personalities or individuals. I kind of half expected Feyre, the main character, to be pretty similar to like Violet. What is her last name? Sorengale from the Empyrean series, or Isla Crown from the Lightlark saga. But she's not really like that. She's almost like the opposite of them in some ways. Like there's a lot of talk about Violet and Isla being really smart and strategic, and Feyre never makes that claim for herself. At the same time, I was like, this is different than what I expected. The two love interests, well, I guess one's a love interest and the other is like the other guy for now, because whatever. But those two characters that have inspired like the Shadow Boos and the Grumpy Golden Boys in Romanticides that follow are exactly what I expected, because I think those are the characters that authors kind of draw more inspiration from in their own work. Not authors in general, just the ones that it seems pretty clear that they're trying to, I don't know, like replicate SJM's success or appeal to the market of SJM fan. I'm not really sure how to word that, but like those were exactly what I expected, and they are not more interesting or compelling or deep or dynamic than their, I can't even call them watered down counterparts. They're just like the same with different names. I do think that because these ones are the first, maybe they have like more interesting abilities or something, but that's not saying much at all. The antagonist, Amarantha, like get her motivations, but she is just one of those villains that's villainous for the sake of being a villain, and is so cartoonishly evil that I was like, you're kind of not interesting to read about. I will say that thing with the eye on the ring, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool, I guess. Like, credit is where credit's due. I didn't expect this book to be quite as violent as it is. Okay, I'll put it this way, and this might have, this little note might have fit better in the craft section of my rapid fire review, which is not going as rapidly as I would like. I feel like when people talk about the series, they really like talk up the spice, and I have not heard anyone talk about the violence. And personally, I feel like this is more violent than it is spicy. Moving on to conflict, there's a lot of it. I don't care about any of it. I think even though these characters feel kind of like shallow, there's a lot of like melodrama, and the tension really isn't there. Like, I don't know if it's a pacing issue or whatever, but didn't feel any of the tension. you know, especially when things are like just randomly attacking Feyre. I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's happening now. Okay, she's fine or whatever. I think the climax or like the big confrontations were dragged out, and it's weird because like, yeah, it's weird because it feels like a lot of things happen pretty quick, and also it's dragged out. So I don't know. I just didn't like it. This one, I think in other books like this that I've reviewed, I would usually say something like, "Oh yeah, I didn't see that end coming. I saw all of this coming pretty easily." But to be fair, not entirely sure if that's just because I've read things that have drawn inspiration from this series before this. Like maybe if I had read this first, I would have been like, whoa, but also I probably wouldn't have been. Context, which is like world building and politics, is pretty standard. You know, there's like one world, two different sides of it, I guess. One's for the Fae, one's for the humans. The Fae politics were explained enough that you understand what's going on, but it's not rich, deep, or compelling. The magic's not explained at all, but again, it's magic, so maybe that critique that I usually get into is because I grew up watching anime and power scaling such a thing in that community. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. Same thing with craft. Like Sarah J. Maas definitely has like a not distinctive, but like I can see Sarah J. Maas's influence in other people's writing that I've read. And I kind of feel like this is one of those things where I just don't get it. Like I think that some people would read this prose and be like, wow, this is beautiful. This is really moving. To me, it was just words. You know, like to me, this is very like, I don't even want to call it vanilla because vanilla is a flavor. You know, I don't want to talk smack about vanilla, but it's like, okay. You ever see the show Futurama? They all go out for dinner and this old man who's a professor gets steamed carrot and he's like, oh, I believe that steamed carrot was a little bit spicy for me. That's kind of how I feel about the writing in this book and how I feel about the spice. I mean, I've read some crazy shit now, and to be completely honest, this just isn't it. But again, that might be because I jumped into the deep end first. I would definitely recommend A Court of Sugar and Spice over this like every time. And that's a brazy thing for me to say, but I meant that. Yeah, that's my 4Cs review. I don't know, man. I was expecting way more pizzazz for the way that people have like stalked and harassed my friends to defend this book. You know, I expected something, and I didn't see it. Like, to me, this is just so mid that it's like, why are you going out of your way to like defend it or whatever? Also, real quick, I think personally, this is a personal thing. People have said that SJM is the Taylor Swift of literature. I feel like that's disrespectful to Taylor Swift because Taylor Swift is better at stringing words together. There, said it. I don't even like Taylor Swift. I hate Taylor Swift. All right, let's move on to the rant review section of this video. But before I do that, if you want to support this channel and gain exclusive access to content you won't find anywhere else, make sure you consider subscribing to my Patreon. There you'll get an extra rant review video from me per month, plus access to my exclusive podcast feed, which includes like audio versions of the videos that I post on here. So if you want to listen to these reviews while you're like driving or something like that, you can do that, as well as bonus podcasts. And you also gain access to my private Discord server, the Don't Fret Club Discord server, where we're talking about books and writing and anime and gaming and D&D and just talking about life and sharing videos or photos of our pets. Not my pets, I don't have a pet, but they are. And yeah, everybody in there has been really sweet and really dope, except for one of you. I'm kidding. Relax. You know who you are. And it's just been really fun. We're laying the foundation of this community, and we would love to have you as a part of it. So if any of that sounds exciting or interesting to you, make sure you consider subscribing to my Patreon. And if Patreon's not really your thing, I also have a second channel where I talk about anime and manga. I'm reacting to Haikyuu right now, and I'm about to start reacting to Mob Psycho 100 and Bungo Stray Dogs. So if that sounds interesting or exciting, you can also check that out. And that's everything I got to plug. So cool. Let's move on to the rant review section. Okay, chapter 1. Already bored. She's starving and hunting and sees a giant wolf. Can't tell if it's a regular giant wolf or a fey giant wolf. Are there non-magical giant wolves? I don't think I'ma like this writing style. Wrongly and vulgarly sound weird. Yeah, that's the thing that I've felt about other books. I don't remember what ones, because my memory is for shit, which is partly why I write down my notes for these. But yeah, vulgarly and wrongly, and she does this a lot throughout the book, and I assume that's just part of her writing style. And it hits the ear or the ear of the mind weird. Yeah, I don't like it. It borders on like anachronistic for me. Because I think if someone just said something like that to me in casual conversation, I would probably not think much of it. In this context, it stuck out and it annoyed me. Chapter 2, definitely hate this writing style. Meanness is another bookish pet peeve. Her sisters are spoiled and useless. Her family doesn't give a fuck about her. So meanness, I've heard that came up in Fourth Wing a couple of times, and I just don't like it. You know what I'm saying? Broke my chair again. Chapter 3, she sells wolf and deer hide. Because she was hunting a deer when she sees the giant wolf. I think I already said that. So she killed the wolf, killed the deer, and sells the hide at the market. And she meets a mercenary that we never see again, which is too bad because I was actually kind of like, oh, who is this? All right, and then chapter 4, Faye Bobcat attacks the house. And then I wrote, first Faye lover, question mark, because I didn't know his name. The grumpy golden boy, the first grumpy golden boy. Farrah gets to choose between being killed or living with the Fae in the Fae world. And her dad's like, yo, you should go. And so she goes. Chapter 5, apparently I just wrote chapter 5 and then left it blank. So must not have cared about anything. I don't know. Chapter 6, turns out the Bobcat is hot but wears a mask. Chapter 7, she's forced to face dinner with Tom and Luke. What? She's forced to Fae dinner with Tamlin and Lucien. And Tam says that he's looking after her family. And this doesn't make sense. Like, either he's lying or this was a setup. But if it is, like, fucking why? This is a dumb plan. They grill her about if she's in love. And it clicked. The masks are a curse. And true love's first kiss will break it. Ugh. Which I find out later I was kind of wrong. This is so funny. Autocorrect hates me for real. And it hates the name Tamlin. Chapter 9, Feyre goes hunting with Lucien because she thinks that he can convince Tamara, not Tamlin, Tamara for some reason, to let her go. But Lucien was onto her the whole time. And my note was, can he read minds or is she dumb? And you know what? I never really got my answer, so I'm going to just assume that he can read minds. They're attacked by something called the Bog. Nothing really happens. So it's just like this, like cold presence that kind of talks to you or whatever. I think if you like acknowledge it, it can become solid and then it'll kill you or something. But they don't move or acknowledge it, so then that doesn't happen. Lucien tells Tamlin about it, and then Tamlin's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go kill it." And then Feyre's dad shows up when she's trying to go to bed. And my note is probably a Fae in disguise. Chapter 11, I was right. And then apparently I just skipped chapter 12, like didn't bother taking any notes. So we go straight to chapter 13. She gets access to a study where she can teach herself how to write and read, which was confusing to me because I'm like, how are you going to do that? I don't know. Like I don't know anyone who's self-taught when it comes to like reading and writing and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, and then the process that SJM like proposes for how Feyre is going to teach herself how to read and write didn't make a ton of sense, And I think that's a tall order, I'm going to invent how to teach yourself how to read. That's pretty bold, I was like not with it. Feyre decides to trap Soriel. What is autocorrect? What are you doing to me, dog? Because if you trap it, it will answer your questions. And we don't really learn anything. Nothing that we didn't already suspect. So, boring. Chapter 15, ambushed by lizard men. They're called Naga, I think. Chapter 17, Summer Court Fairy shows up. And he's got his wings like ripped off by the unnamed villainess. And then my note is, I assume the same one who cursed the spring court with the masks. And this note doesn't really fall like, it's not from a specific chapter, but just something that I noticed like while I've been reading is that Feyre is a more subtle version of the thirsty boy trope that I've been complaining about ever since I started this channel. Constantly noticing Tamlin's muscles, like somebody just died and was murdered. So maybe this is right after chapter 17, but someone just died or was murdered and tortured. Died like in Feyre's arms, and she's still checking somebody out. And I'm just like, I get that there's supposed to be attraction being built up and that this is a love story. But like, if someone dies in your arms, but you have time to like check somebody out, I feel like you don't care that this person died in your arms. But then the character goes on to talk about how like traumatizing and scary that was and how awful this unnamed villainess must be to do this thing or whatever. I'm like, okay, but like you don't really seem to care when you're like busy drinking in this tall drink of water. You know what I'm saying? I've talked about it before, and I think I just talked about it at length. I don't remember when that video is coming out. But I really do find that whole like thirsty character thing to be really annoying. I don't know. I just like any character like that in any medium is going to drive me up the wall. But in books, I find it just like the context around the horniness is always just so inappropriate. And I don't mean inappropriate like in a prudish way. I mean, it doesn't fit. That it's just weird. Like, I'm down to get down, but I'm also like, if someone died in my arms, I'm gonna be really focused on the fact that somebody died in my arms. That's all I'm trying to say. Chapter 18, I had 2 notes. 1, why is Tamlin being a High Lord such a big deal? Like, I don't get why that, like, I don't know. I was just like, she's so taken aback by the fact that he is a High Lord. Not even that he didn't tell her, but just that he is one. And then number 2, centuries-old characters getting with teenagers is always weird to me. And I talked about this, I think, I don't remember what videos I've mentioned it in before, but it's so weird. Like, I really don't want to yuck people's yums in a way, right? But I do think that kind of putting this out for younger people, and I don't think, like, I don't know if teenagers read this or whatever, if this is more of like an early 20s thing. But like, I just think that setting people up to like be attracted to older people like with big age gaps is kind of problematic and dangerous. And I think that it enables a culture that you don't really want to enable. And then again, I don't know if this is for chapter 18 or whatever, but she let out a breath that she didn't know she was holding. Come on. I know a lot of people hate that phrase. I don't even remember where it comes from or who the first one was, but there's got to be a better way to say that you like didn't realize that you were feeling really tense or that you had tensed up until you relaxed, because so many people do it now, you know? So chapter 19, she's pissed that her family didn't try to stop her from leaving or go in her place. And I get that. I would be too. But also, like, you know your family sucks, right? And then my note is, they're like as bad as Harry Potter's uncle and aunt. I don't actually know if that's true because I've never read Harry Potter. I think I've seen a friend of mine reached out and was like, dude, we watched like the first 3 movies together. I'm like, oh, cool. I don't remember that. But so I don't know if that's true, but I am aware that they made him like live under the stairs or something. Tamlin shares his semi-tragic backstory. And I don't like the use of chattel in regards to the humans being enslaved by the Fae commentary. And it happens a couple of times. And I don't know if I mark it later on, but I'll talk about it now. So, like, this was something that I don't know if I'd heard any of my friends, because I only heard like 2 or 3 people talk about this series before, but I don't know if I heard any of them say this. But the commentary on slavery and the subtle, like, things that are said is profoundly ignorant, I think. Like, just calling it chattel slavery twice, I don't care for that at all. And I think there's something to be said about like saying that the ones who did the enslaving were non-human. It's a problem I had with Castlevania Nocturne, that like all the enslavers were vampires. I think that it kind of sets up this thing where you're saying that like the ones who do enslavement, or the ones who enslave people, are non-human. And I think the intention is to say like, oh, it's monstrous. But really what you're kind of saying is human beings are not capable of doing something like that. And that's absolutely not true. human beings are perfectly capable of it. And I think it's that thing that a lot of like sort of fake white allies do, where they're like, oh, I'm not like those white people. You know, like people who do those things are monstrous. And they kind of like dehumanize people who do terrible things in order to separate themselves from that, instead of acknowledging that that's a part of human history. For me, like to bring it home, it would be like if I said that men who abuse their partners, men who assault people, men who do these things aren't men, they're bums. Aren't men, they're monsters, or something like that. Like I'm saying they're not men, so I'm trying to distance myself from them. And that's not okay, because that's not me taking ownership of like, yeah, I benefit from the same systems of oppression that enable other men to do things like this. And so I'm not saying that that's what SJM's doing intentionally. That's just sort of like what I think the intention is, to just say like, this is how bad things were. Because like, I'm not trying to accuse her of being like that nefarious. I just think that it's really ignorant, and that's what's being done unintentionally. And there was a line in there that said like 500 years cannot wash away like the suffering of my people, meaning humans, because Pharaoh's the one who's saying that. So it's like, okay, so you kind of get that like these things are being felt, but you also like kind of appropriated this tragedy that's not yours to appropriate. And I also had a problem with the fact that like Tamlin's father is the one who had the slaves, and he was like mad about having to let the slaves go after the end of this like humans versus fairy war, which by the way, that doesn't make any sense to me, because I'm like, can't just like one of y'all like wipe out all humans with like a snap of your finger? Because they talk about how powerful the top dogs are in each fairy court, and I'm like that could not have been much of a war. You know what I'm saying? That's a rant. But like the fact that Tamlin's father is the one who had slaves, they're in the house that had slaves in it for a lot of the book, but Tamlin gets a pass. Like you know, he's not the bad one because he didn't like slavery or whatever. It just felt very like, oh, I'm not like one of those fairies type of thing, and it just really bothered me. And I'm not saying that I think that like Sarah J. Maas has a white hood or something like that. I just think that this is like profoundly ignorant to write and to appropriate. And when this is in the book, it really doesn't shock me that she would use Breonna Taylor's murder as a marketing tactic, because it was a hot button issue when she did this, and then not apologize or take the post down or even acknowledge that what she did was wrong. I don't know if I would say that's like a nefarious, like, you know, finger pyramid of evil contemplation type of move, but I think it's profoundly ignorant and self-serving. And so I'm just not shocked by that. So I don't fuck with this. That really, like, if I already didn't like the book because I found it really boring, that would have really, you know, like, it's not good, but that shit made it bad for me. So I think we're at chapter 20. That was long. She's salty that she isn't invited to Fire Night, which is some kind of spring festival, I think. And she sneaks into the festival and is cornered by 3 shady-looking fairies and is saved by the most beautiful man she's ever seen. And it took way too long to get to the edgy shadow boo of this book. Like, we're basically halfway through this thing, and this is the first time we're hearing about him. Chapter 21, my note is, it's sort of painfully obvious which one SJM wants to fuck. The spring holiday is about Tamlin picking somebody to murder and then someone else to have sex with to bring magic back to the earth or something. And he goes feral, and he goes looking for Feyre. She sees him in a hallway, and he bites her neck. And I was like, that's really weird. All of this is weird. I don't like it. Like, for some weird reason, the neck biting in A Court of Sugar and Spice took me less by surprise. I think because they'd already like done a bunch of biting with like the arms and stuff, and I was like, kind of like, when A Court of Sugar and Spice feels like it eases you into something more than A Court of Thorns and Roses, you know, it's out of left field. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay. Chapter 23, Tamlin's mouth becomes a hard, thin line a lot. Chapter 24, the slavery talk. Okay, we already went through that. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to do the rant again. It's just like it's just really ignorant, you know? It's like, it's not like the Tilly Cole KKK romance book levels, but it's up there, you know? Now, for some reason, like, I don't really know what happened, but I stopped taking note of what chapter I was on when I would take these notes, so now your guess is as good as mine. Rhys comes to taunt Tamlin and sees Feyre, so I think Feyre gives him like a fake name. She's like, oh, I shouldn't give this dude my name, which good call. And so Tamlin sends her back home, and while she's back home, she shit talks humans and refers to Tamlin as her High Lord a lot. And I was just like, you forgot where you came from, dog. Back home, Nessa, her oldest sister, reveals that she never like fell for the glamour or the Men in Black memory wipe thing that Tamlin did to the rest of the family, and she's mad at Feyre and then convinces her to go and try and save Tamlin or be with Tamlin or whatever, because she's like, you're not home. Your home is somewhere else far away. Feyre leaves her family again and goes back to the house, like Tamlin's house. Tamlin's been taken by the queen who cursed him with the mask, and the curse was so specific and convoluted, and it was really specific. That really felt like Sarah J. Maas didn't know what the curse was gonna be until she got to that point in the book where she would have to explain what the curse is in its entirety, and then just reverse engineered the curse to fit the plot perfectly. Too perfect, you know what I'm saying? I think it'd be fine if someone's like trying to break a curse that time wasn't gonna be up for another like couple weeks or something like that, you know? Like, I think it's fine. Or like try to break a curse that's already past due somehow, and so it feels really hopeless or something. I don't know. Amarantha has taken everything that she wanted, and she enslaved Tamlin. Feyre goes to the sacred mountain to free him, and Amarantha shows a woman's corpse, and it's the girl whose name Feyre gave in her place. So Rhys must have gone and got her and killed that girl's family and stuff. And I say must have. That happened. I just didn't take note of it at first because I was like, you know, busy. This was one of those times where it's like the character Feyre doesn't really seem to care, like that she did this, or that she got all these people killed, or that this woman was tortured in her place. Like, she's like, oh yeah, that's kind of shitty, but that's about as far as it goes. And I think that's part of that lack of humanity that I was talking about before. I understand that, like, if you want the plot to move forward, you can't have somebody like collapse in on themselves or whatever, but I feel like there isn't enough emotion for me to really think that this character gives a shit about what has happened to this woman. Amarantha gives Feyre a bargain, 3 tasks, or answer a riddle. Feyre is brought before Amarantha, and she wants to know her name, and she doesn't give it, so then she has Rhys and mind wipe Lucien, or about to. And then my note is, it's weird that Feyre had time to take note that Lucien's 4 brothers, who are from like a different court, are handsome. Like, that's more of that thirsty boy shit that I was talking about before. I'm just like, yo, relax. You know, there's ways to acknowledge people without being like, hey there, you know? Feyre fights a giant worm. That was like the first task, I think. And then she gets wounded. I think she impales her arm on a loose bone because they're in this like pit of bones or something. So then Rhys offers to make her a deal where she lives with him 2 weeks out of every month in the night court for the rest of her life, and then they haggle down to a week per month. And my note is, the violence that this man is willing to inflict on women is just misogyny dressed up in shadow. It's dangerous and it's gross, and that's something that I really don't love about the 2 love interests in this series so far. And just the knockoffs that follow. They're all very like possessive and paternalistic of the main character, and it really, it gives me the creeps. And it's fucking weird to me that these are so popular because, like, ooh, isn't misogyny hot? And yeah, as a dude, I'm probably not the one to talk about this, but it did just like, it feels really strange. Even, back in high school, I had friends who were girls. If a guy was this possessive or even like half this possessive over them, they would be like, ew, gross, that guy's a dick. Like, why would I want to be with him? So I just think it's weird that there's so many, like, these books are so popular, and other books like it are so popular, and people thirst after these characters and write characters based off of these characters, but they're just like misogynistic and controlling in their own different ways and abusive. Like the violence that both are willing to commit near or in front of this woman, I don't think is okay. And like, if I treated my wife the way that like these guys treat Farah, she would leave me. And she would have every right to leave me. And then my next note is he owns her now. Gross. So I guess I wasn't done with that. And then my note is like the fact that she's kind of losing interest, or it seems like she's kind of getting the ick for Tamlin because he's sort of resigning himself to the situation or trying to play along with Amarantha because he's kind of caught and he doesn't want her to get killed. I thought that was really gross, the fact that she's kind of, it's almost like this term kind of gets misused a lot, but toxic femininity, which is where like women build into toxic masculinity from the opposite side or whatever. It's not like misandry, which some guys think it is. It's this other thing. I just really didn't like that, and that's one of the things I hated about this character. And then Rhysand like licks her tears at some point, and he drugs her and makes her drink this fairy wine. And that was just really gross. Makes her like wear these really revealing clothes and makes her dance on him or for him. And why is that a love interest? That's not okay. That's fucked up. It's ugh. So she ends up like winning all 3 challenges, but in the bargain for the challenges, Amarantha was like, I didn't say when I would free them. I just said that I would sometime. You didn't specify when, so like they're still stuck here under this mountain with me as my slaves, and their masks stay on. And then she starts just like magically beating the shit out of Farah, and I was kind of like, I mean, I know she's gonna survive somehow, so like I don't care. When not enough bad shit has happened to a protagonist before the climax, I don't really care about the climax. Like, you really got to tell me that the stakes matter by, like, killing a best friend or something like that, or I'm just not going to care. That's a personal thing, by the way. I think we should kill more main characters. I think authors should be willing to let the readers know that they play for keeps. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I ever finish my fucking little project for fun, it's just going to be the protagonist standing over a stack of bodies. As Farah's like fucked up and dying and shit, she figures out the answer to the riddle. And so she says like, love is the answer. Love is the answer to this riddle. And then I think whether or not Amarantha wanted it, whatever, the curse is undone. And then Tamlin like is free. And he just kills Amarantha like that. That was maybe the highlight of the book. I was like, that's brutal. And again, I wasn't ready for it. Like, no one talks about how violent these books are. So I was like kind of taken by surprise by that. Like, not surprised that it happened, but just like he like rips out her throat and stabs her through the head. I was like, that's overboard. Personally, I would have just done one or the other, but like go off, King. Have fun, I guess. And then the book kind of ends like everyone's like, all right, well, let's peace out of here. Yay, we're done. Ding dong, the witch is dead. She finally gets to take a look at Tamlin's face, which she's been wanting to do the whole book. And then my note says, like, she looks at Tamlin's face and she's like, the Fae I killed didn't die in vain because I get to look at his face and he's fine as hell. And that's not what she said, but it's basically like the sentiment that she expressed. Because I think the 3rd channel, she had to stab like 2 fairies with ashwood daggers. And yeah, I was like, yeah, you're like way too selfish and way too uncaring for me to like give a fuck. Oh yeah, and she dies, but she's brought back to life and turned into a high fae. Yeah, that's the end of the book, basically. And I usually make like a food comparison when it comes to these kind of books, and like I don't even know what to say about this, man. It's just like a Kraft Singles and Wonder Bread grilled cheese sandwich. It's so bleh. Some people might jump to like, well, you've read stuff inspired by it before this, so of course it's going to seem derivative. I don't think it's derivative. I just think that it's like just a book. I was expecting like more pizzazz and like more spice or dynamics or like lovable characters or something like that, or interesting characters or whatever. But all I got is like someone who doesn't care about anyone but herself and two borderline abusers. And maybe if I grew up loving Beauty and the Beast, I don't know why I would have, but I was more of a Lion King guy myself, or Jungle Book. Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Forget about your worries or your strife. Yeah, man. I was about to sing that whole song. I had to stop myself. And yeah, so like, was it good? I don't think so. Did I enjoy it? No, not at all. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not. Like, me and Sarah J. Maas's politics or like morals not aligning, aside from that, I still just wouldn't recommend it because I feel like there's better, more interesting fantasy out there. But I'm also not going to go tell someone to support somebody who supports genocide. And I'm also not going to tell somebody to support someone who like appropriates Black trauma and tragedy in their work and in their marketing tactics. I say all this and people probably won't hear me when I say this. And I feel like some people are going to really disagree with me on this. You usually are more aligned with me. But I think like if you're a fan of this series, I don't automatically think that you're like racist or Islamophobic or anything like that. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. Like, I might raise an eyebrow, but I also like, one of my sisters loves this series, right? And I don't think that she's racist or Islamophobic. Like, people identify with the media that they love so much that when someone criticizes it or the person who created it, they can get real like defensive and want to lash out or whatever. And I'm really not saying that you're a bad person if you like this shit. Like, if you love it, okay, whatever. I don't know how you made it through this whole video. That's impressive. And I voice my beliefs here and there because I know that some of my viewers want to know that they're supporting somebody who doesn't support genocide. And I need some people to know that, you know, I'm a light-skinned Black man. I ain't tap dancing for nobody, okay? Like, I'm pretty sure most of my audience is pretty white. And so sometimes I just need them to know that I don't fuck with anti-Blackness and I'm not about to, like, denigrate other Black people for your entertainment or for your approval. And if that made you uncomfortable, that was a vibe check and you may not have passed. This might be a little all over the place because I really wasn't sure if I even wanted to make this video. I didn't really want to read this book. I just kind of figured I would to see how it's influenced other books that I've reviewed and also to see what the people who've like harassed and antagonized my friends are defending. And now that I know, I don't feel like my life is better for it, you know, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching it, especially if you made it to the end. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel and you're not like so angry at me, please subscribe. And this is the first video I'm recording in the new year. So I just want to say, like, you know, back in July, I had, you know, a couple of subscribers just from like my music days and my poetry days and stuff like that. Nothing like too interesting, but within 6 months, you know, we're up to like 2,500 subscribers. And I feel like that's pretty good, you know? I really appreciate every single one of you. I really appreciate my patrons, especially my super duper Don't Fret Club members, Knightsmith and Keisha. Thank you so much for your support. You're enabling me to do what I want to do and make this content. And if you want a special shout out or you want access to the exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, make sure you consider subscribing to my Patreon. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So thanks again so much for watching. My name is D, and don't fret. I'll see you next time. Peace out.